Welcome everybody to another episode of DNS Unfiltered. Today I'm joined by Matt Solomon. How are you, Matt?
I'm doing great, man. It's good to see you. It's been a while.
So Matt and I have chatted before in like a more customer vendor relation, we've talked a little bit. I've probably seen you at conferences here and there.
Yeah.
Um, but Matt, you do a lot of things in like the MSP space. Tell us your resume and how that all started.
Like you mean like going back, like how I even got into the space or
Yeah, well, let's start with now, and then we can
nah.
say, like, which law did you almost break to get started in computers?
Sounds good. Yeah, so right now I am a co-founder of Channel Program, which is a resource platform for MSPs to visualize, manage, and evaluate their technology stack. Uh, in addition to that, you could argue I'm a co-founder of BetterTracker, which is a tool we sell that allows MSPs to manage all their vendor contracts, all of their SaaS subscriptions, and allows them to resell the tool to their customers. So they're able to track the usage of everything their customers are logging into and also track a lot of the expenses to have better business outcome conversations with their MSP. So that's obviously very top level of what we're doing here, but yeah, we're excited about what we've built over the last couple of years.
So if you had to pick, which is your favorite baby, Better Tracker or Channel Program?
Well, it's always, it's channel program got us to where we are and allowed us to build better trackers. So it's all part of one. But moving forward, definitely my main focus, is going to really be on better tracker and bringing that out to the MSP community. And we've got over, just since kind of this version of the launch back in April, we've got over 330 partners in North America already.
Well, let's talk about that MSP community for a
Sure,
minute.
sure.
So there are several places online where MSPs kind of gather. There's some like Slack groups, some slightly more public than others. There's r/MSP, which is everyone's favorite
Yeah.
favorite place to get ridiculed,
Yep.
me included.
Yep.
Uh, so the MSP community is like just kind of different than almost any other community. Tell me how it's different. And like, what do you think about it?
Yeah. So one thing I love about the MSP community is it's it's one of the most like giving communities in terms of like willing to share data or information and successes with quasi some competitors in a lot of cases. So that's the thing I've enjoyed the most. It's just that everybody's like willing to help another person even if they're not getting anything out of it, even if it is maybe slightly competitive. And it is actually fascinating, even to see like we've hosted a couple dinners, locally in a few cities, and one of the questions was like, "Wow, you're like bringing a bunch of competitors together," and they're like, they get in the room and they're like, "We don't even like face up against each other." Like there's so much business to have out there. So that's one side. You're certainly alluding, with those communities. There's also a side to the MSP community that everybody's voice likes to be heard really loudly. Whether it's in the Reddit communities, and it's definitely tough on like being on the vendor side of that. So I think what it does is it really forces the vendor community to be like really customer centric and really partner centric, because no one likes to get put on blast in these social environments. The only thing I would say though is, if an MSP is listening, is if these types of communities existed for your customers to complain verbally and things like that, there's sometimes better ways to do it than just doing it publicly. A lot of times there's just misunderstanding. So I think just I'd love to see an improvement on the communication of misunderstandings, but I get it. I get the social world we live in today.
Yeah, I mean, it's just humans. We're just
Yeah.
humans sometimes, but it is really fascinating of how giving the MSP community is. Like even the voices you see on LinkedIn a lot, like they're really providing value, not in like a cliche, like trying to get an audience type of way. They're genuinely trying to help. And that is, you don't see that often.
Yeah, no, I mean, honestly, it amazes me. Yeah, I mean, you've got a couple, there's like leading voices in the space that are, yeah, they're MSP owners, and rightfully so. I mean, they're the ones in the trenches. It's easy for us as vendors sometimes to talk about, what we would do, but we're not in the trenches every day. So I think it is important that they have their own people as major voices in the community. But I see it, I'm part of, well, formerly of CompTIA, but GTIA, I'm always amazed. Like, yeah, I give some of my time, back to the community there, but gosh, when I go there, I'm like, I'm blown away by both MSPs and vendors, the ones who just give so much. And I'm like, you guys make me feel like a terrible person, the amount that they're willing to do for this community.
Well, like from those seats, so like, Channel Program is a great community. Gitia, is it Gitia, I guess it's
Uh,
pronounced?
I think they just say GTIA. I don't know if anybody
Okay.
pronounces it that way or not.
Just me.
Yeah.
Uh, so GTIA,
Yeah.
like those are, really, really great places to convene MSPs, like get their thoughts together and, talk shop with each other. How do you think the MSPs that are, I guess maybe they're successful, maybe not, but how are vendors doing things differently that kind of cut through the noise that all the MSPs see?
Um, I think one of the biggest lessons I think vendors have taken over the years is really like having to empower their MSP customers or partners. I you know I would say, like, if you look back when we first got into the space with ID Agent back in 2017, 18, like Datto was like the clear winner in terms of like partner enablement materials. Like it would just blow people away. And we were on the road with them a lot at some of their events. And so like we kind of like copied what they were doing, obviously in different contexts, but we just saw that. And it really led to us having like raving fans because we were putting so much back in. And I think it's like important to remember that, it's easy, right? Like you want to push your product to the MSP, but the reality is they have 20 or 30 other core technologies that they're using. And they're probably subscribing to 80 different subscriptions of various tools. So, I mean, my hat's off always to these MSPs because they're balancing so many different tools, and it's really becoming difficult. And the AI is really just adding more to that. So I do think the one thing I've seen like a big change on the vendor side is really like honing in on enablement materials. And another area is around like, and no one likes the word onboarding, but it is important that if you're going to form a partnership, because every vendor will complain, oh, the MSP is not doing anything with it. So I do think those early stages of onboarding or whatever you're going to want to call it is critically important to getting usage out of the tool, because if an MSP uses the tool, they're infinitely more likely to roll it out to their customers. And so I think that's another thing that we've started seeing a lot of vendors really hone in on is that first 60 days is so critical, because I'm sure you hear, Mikey, like the first, when an MSP signs up with a vendor, one of the first things they say is, how quickly can I make my money back on this? It's such a big thing. And that's where those 30 to 60 days are really critical, because if you can get them making back their money in those 30 to 60 days, you're going to have a very happy customer.
Yeah, we actually, and I won't use real numbers, but
Mm-hmm.
at DNS Filter, we see if people sign up for a trial and they actually send traffic to us, they're much more sticky in the long run to becoming a customer. The numbers
Yeah.
are not exactly sure, but it's significantly higher. They actually send us traffic, and that's what we focus on. It's like, we want you to use our tool. We're giving you 2 weeks to test it out on yourself and see if you like how it performs, everything about it. But we really want you to send traffic. Like, just send
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. No, absolutely. The other thing I just kind of think about is, I think it's not perfect, but I think you're getting a lot more transparency in the vendor space. I mean, I think part of it's just because there's so much competitive landscape that you don't really have a choice. You have to really be upfront about, everything you're offering and whatnot. But it's because of that competitive nature, it is really forcing vendors to push their technologies to differentiate themselves. So, I think you're seeing that a lot. Is like because there's a million, I won't even name a category, but there, in certain categories there could be 20, 30 vendors. So how do you differentiate yourself? What's going to make you stand out? So you're seeing, and I think with AI, obviously, it's pushing development in a much faster pace. So which is ultimately good for the MSPs because they're getting better products.
So the See, the things you've mentioned thus far seem like they're kind of your thoughts around maybe what led you to create Channel Program, you and your team there. Does that sound about right?
Yeah, so I mean,
Like,
if you go back to the origins of when we built Channel Program, it was during COVID, and it was at a time when events, to me, and they still are out of control in terms of how many there are, what the costs are, and it's so hard for an emerging vendor to spend that kind of money to have any type of stage presence. And so we looked at it like, if so, we Kevin and myself got this question so many times from vendors. If I don't have $1 million, how can I make a name for myself? And it just kept happening and happening. And we are like, well, there's no great answer. So maybe we should build something. And so when we first launched it, it was really a virtual pitch event that we had where we'd bring on 6 to 8 vendors. Here's the key part though, is everybody got equal time on stage. And it was a virtual stage. It was 7 minutes. And the cool part about it was MSPs could attend anonymously. So it was like a safe environment to hear from new vendors and only raise their hand if they wanted to give up their information. So it was a really cool way of like introducing new technologies, or maybe a technology they've heard of before and just hadn't heard them on stage, and just had a new opportunity to hear the new things they have. So we kind of came in swinging, using big words like we were going to democratize the channel. But we wanted to give all vendors kind of an equal opportunity to get in front of MSPs. And, in that first one, we had like 400 MSPs, it was peak COVID. And like, we thought we figured it out from there. And then slowly the platform evolved and really became a resource platform for MSPs to do everything along the buyer's journey up until the point of actually buying the product. So if they want to research every company that does dark web monitoring, they can go in and search them, and they can see how their peers are feeling about them. We've got over 6,000 reviews from MSPs, and they have to put their name on it. So it's not like Reddit. We have vendors like yourselves answering questions that MSPs want to know before they do a demo. Sometimes they want to know, do you offer month-to-month contracts? Do you offer NFR? Do you offer MFA, marketing, funds? So we're helping answer a lot of those questions, and ultimately that actually helps both sides, because it doesn't waste an MSP's time with something that's not a right fit. And same thing with a vendor. It's like, it sucks to get on a demo, go through a whole demo, and then they tell you, oh, you don't integrate to our PSA, we can't move forward with this. So that's really, really where Channel Program over the last few years has become really the ultimate agnostic resource. And that's what I'll point out, Mikey. There's very few agnostic places for MSPs to get all this information, and that's where we're tried to bring it all into one place.
yeah, everything is sponsored by some vendor, even this podcast, basically. Channel Program is really good. I've actually spent some time in there the past month, like sprucing up the DNS filter profile, like with some of the things you just said, like does it integrate with this and that PSA? Like
Mm-hmm.
what's the service model? What's the license model? What's how many NFR licenses? And the way you guys started with like anonymity as a draw, I think is pretty important for MSPs because they're inundated with marketing emails and phone calls that they really don't want to answer or respond to.
No, it's tough, especially after a conference where the lead lists are given to all the sponsors. Yeah, no, I don't have MSPs when it comes to some of that stuff.
So you already mentioned the word with the letters AI twice. So
Okay.
I want to get to that, but first I want you to tell me a little bit more about this from your experience, like in the MSP space. What are some like sales lessons that most security pros, like from the MSP side, that they don't really appreciate when they're trying to sell to their end users?
Um, so yeah, there's a couple of ways I could go around with that. So number one, I think, is just, well, first thing I was actually thought of was around social, and having a voice in your own community. You see it. Vendors like myself, like you've got this podcast. We create voices. We go out, like we just do it, right? We create a voice for ourselves, and it helps establish trust in our community. it makes it easier for somebody to say yes to a demo or a conversation, because they'll come up to me at an event and they'll say, "Oh my gosh, I see all of your posts on LinkedIn. It's nice to put a face to a name here at this event." I think that's one area that's a huge miss for MSPs, and I understand it. A lot of them are technical people who moved over to being an owner, and it's not their forte. But to me, because of that, it actually makes it even a bigger missed opportunity. I think in LinkedIn, for example, I think the stat is 1% of all users, and you're talking about hundreds of millions of users, consistently post several times a week. And so what that screams to me is, oh my gosh, like if I was an MSP owner in Austin, Texas, like, wow, like what an opportunity to be in front of a bunch of small businesses that my competitors aren't creating a voice in front of. So that's one area that I would think of. When it comes to like talking around security, specifically, and because I talked a lot about this at ID Agent, and I'm not a security expert. And it's funny, I would get put on panels sometimes with like Kyle from Huntress and stuff like that, and like John from Blackpoint. I was like, no, I'm not gonna be on this panel. You're talking about like John used to work at the White House. Like I'm not like a security expert, but I knew how to like articulate how an MSP could sell this tool to their customers. And I feel like what I'm about to say is said a lot, but I guess it's worth repeating because I don't think everybody follows it, which is, you can't like tech them to death in a sales pitch. I use the example like a network assessment. Like a network assessment can be very big. Every MSP in the world can probably do a network assessment, but I'm not a technical owner. If you threw a network assessment in front of me, I wouldn't know what the hell I was looking at. So it's like you have to find how to talk about these things in a clear and concise way. Find the pain point of that data set that you're assume that they shouldn't know, that not going to know about, and really just hone in on that. So I just think it's just making it much more simplistic and honing in on the problem and the solutions versus like all the data set that's in a report.
Yeah, that's actually really good advice. I did a one of these episodes of this podcast with my coworker in marketing, Abigail Hendren, and that's essentially what we talked about is like have a voice. Like there's a huge opportunity to go out and have a voice. And like you said, oh, there's I'm a nerdy type and I don't like to be on camera. It's like those are the best people to have on camera.
Yeah. Well, and
Anyway,
just find topics that I actually one of the things they get asked a lot is like, well, I don't know what to talk about. Well, just think about like I think the easiest one is like FAQ. What are the most frequently asked questions a small business would have with a managed service provider? And put those videos out. Like that's a great one because you're answering a question that all these small businesses have, and it's something you already know. So I think, and then just find your niche. It doesn't. You don't have to be awesome at all of it. And in fact, I'd argue the videos that you do that are less scripted come off way more realistic or authentic, I guess is the word that everybody uses. And I find that with myself sometimes. I actually remember this one time I like really was using some tool and I like really spent a lot of time on the video and I put it out and it was pure cricket. I was like, I thought it was going to be like a home run.
you're like, this was a banger. It
Yeah,
was
yeah,
perfect.
yeah. And then a few weeks earlier, I had gone on my rooftop when I was in Washington, D.C., and it was snowing. And, I went out with a jacket, I had my thing, just snowing, did some message, didn't really mean that much. 10x what I got on my productive, like the one that I spent actual time on. So you never know. But I think people just like to see you in a real like environment, and that's why people do a lot of those like walking videos, and that's effective. People just like, oh, you did that at the conference we were at, blah blah blah. So yeah, I think people overthink it, and with ChatGPT, you can obviously come up with probably a million ideas on
Right.
content.
You could just like read it right into your pen. Don't do that.
Yeah, yeah.
Which is the reason I did not send Matt the questions that I have for him before this
Okay.
podcast. Authenticity.
Yeah.
So speaking of questions, my next question is about so MSPs are juggling a lot. We already talked about um, the tools that are everywhere. There's like, oh, should I, start a YouTube channel? Should I have a podcast? Like, how do we do marketing? There's a lot of things they're juggling. How do they understand and balance what's urgent versus what's important?
Oh gosh, that is a really good question. I think number one, I would say you obviously have to have your core stack, obviously. So like, and they probably already have that, most of them. I think you have to find a balance. I don't know if this is like the perfect answer, but I would probably be leaning on peers. Find out what's working, what's not working. Because look, you can go down. I mean, you could sign up for 5 AI tools and spend a whole bunch of time, like I just talked about, and waste time using those things. And that's why, I mean, I think that the MSP community so heavily relies on peers, because there are people who've used various tools, get their opinions. You can read product reviews on our platform. So I don't know if I have the answer of like what they should look at first, other than I think really depending on, try some things out, talk to your peers, do some research. But I do think from like a sales and marketing perspective, and I'm hammering it now, you have to put yourself out there. You got to start that pipeline of content and get it out to the world, because it's not fun being like the best MSP in your region and nobody knows about you. I mean, and that's the reality. And vendors face that same challenge. You can have the coolest technology, but if you're not out there and you're not putting it out there, no one knows about it. It doesn't really matter.
Yeah, I think we actually did like a little training this morning at DNS Filter. Um, and we were talking about managers being like a coach and and the mentor and like a multiplier. And I think what you're saying is like you don't have to have the answer necessarily. Like, what do I work on? What's the most important thing? You don't have to know what the answer is. You just need to know like how to go find the answer and not necessarily find it, but be inspired for it to reveal itself, perhaps.
Yeah, and I guess what I would add on to that, as you were talking, I was thinking about it. Um, you know, we've already been talking about like not selling the tools, like really focus on outcomes. I think that's a huge theme for this year, like selling the business outcomes, efficiencies, right? Whether it's AI efficiencies or, with BetterTracker, you're talking about technology spend. Hey, you've got 5 products that all do the same thing. Why are you paying for all 5 of these? I mean, the simplest one that you could probably win and save your customers money is just Zoom and Teams. How many people are still paying for Zoom when they've got Teams for not for free, but it's already part of their Microsoft bundle? So there's a lot of ways, but I think because everybody's, we still have a pretty turbulent economy, and it's forcing all small businesses to carefully look at their expenses, and then we're in the midst, I don't know when this will play, but right now we're in the midst of a government shutdown, which has a ripple effect to lots of industries. So again, what are people doing? They're looking at what they spend, personally and professionally. So again, I think when you're able to talk about business outcomes, you're going to have a lot more success selling whatever you're selling.
100% agree. I just earlier this week had saw a little thing pop up in my Google Workspace in the calendar, and I was like, booking links, new feature. And I was like, oh, we have a tool that does booking links. Bye bye. Bye
Yeah.
bye tool. Like we can now do this for the same price we're already paying for
Yeah,
like Google Workspace and stuff.
that's exactly right. I mean, like people use Calendly, but if you have got HubSpot does the same thing. you know, there might be reasons you want to use Calendly, and nothing against them, but there are ways you can be more efficient with your technology spend and also not have to manage so many SaaS subscriptions.
And to the MSPs out there, that is what your clients are looking for. That's really why they pay you, is because you are the bringer of clever efficiency in their business. You're like, what's the technical advisor? This is like the promise of MSPs is something you need to start doing if you're not already.
Yeah,
And the key word there is efficiency this year
yeah,
specifically.
no, absolutely. We had an MSP using our tool. They found, that their customer was, and some of it they knew, but they were using 365. They were using Google Workspace and Dropbox. It was like a 25-person organization, and based on, kind of discovering these different things, they were able to save that customer $8,500. And when you start saving people money, you might have already been a trusted advisor, but they start liking you a lot more when you start saving them money, and then in turn, they're willing to spend more money with you, most likely. So,
Yeah, now you know they have $8,500 worth of
Well, that's right.
budget.
Exactly. Well, that's why I use like the Zoom and Teams one, because that's a really quick win on how to get some money over to your side.
So let's get into the conversation about AI a little bit. What type of AI are you and your team using regularly currently?
So we're using some development AI tools. It's probably enhanced our development by 50%. It's crazy how much faster you can move on a product, which is awesome because then we just take the MSP feedback and say, hey, you guys have been asking for this. We're delivering it much faster than we ever could have before. Um, Certainly, like the chat GPTs of the world are using those types of tools and just refining things. I think everybody's getting a little bit better at spotting AI, and there's some telltale signs with like the M dash and things like that. But definitely, it's a great brainstorming resource. It's again, we talked about like if you're stuck on ideas for video content, just talk to an AI tool about it. And then, so I mean, those are like what we're using like internally, and then for our own self, like with BetterTracker, we're actually launching our first AI component where it's actually an AI OCR tool where an MSP can upload a contract, via PDF, and it will actually extract all of the information out of the contract. Because a lot of it was manual when we first launched, so it really is helping pull out that information. And then we're creating AI agents for ourselves or for our customers or MSPs where they can essentially have a conversation about their financials with our tool.
Yeah,
So,
that's actually a really good uh, semi segue a little bit. So you mentioned a couple of things in there that really piqued my interest. First, you were talking
okay.
about like AI development, like vibe coding esque. But the funny
Mhm.
thing about coding with AI is like if you have a developer doing it, they can spot where it messes up, which is really
Yep.
powerful. That's really cool. I do a little bit of that. Trying to build some little side things. I'm like, oh, it would be cool if something could send me an email every day and
Yeah.
run a little automation or some vibe coded thing. But nothing like production worthy. I don't trust myself quite that much. But if you have the right team, that you can trust them enough.
Yep.
The other thing you mentioned was essentially ETL, which means extract, transform, and load. So this
Mm.
is where you can OCR a contract or any other document into a format that is AI friendly,
Yep.
like Markdown. If you're familiar with Markdown, you can take all those documents, give them give them to an AI as like a repository and like
Mm.
what's called a vector database. Sorry, I'm getting a little too nerdy for the audience or you, Matt. But so you're essentially fine tuning whatever AI model you put in front of that knowledge base. So I've done this like just as a test with the DNS filter website and our help docs. And I say, okay, take all the pages. So I grab the sitemap, I put them, translate them into markdown files, put them in a vector store, and then say, ChatGPT, you now have this tool to ask questions. And it's all publicly information, like for training to kind of learn something for myself.
Hmm.
And it's actually really powerful. And your customers are probably looking for things like that, buying tools like that,
Yep.
when you can either build them yourself or find efficient, uh, cost effective ways to give that to them.
No, absolutely. No, and I mean, you're seeing it. Like, I'm not familiar with all of the AI tools that are now coming in the MSP space, but you see people now selling or trying to figure out how to monetize the AI, right? It's yes, people can use Copilot, but that doesn't mean they really are using Copilot. So you're starting to see like AI as a service for some of these MSPs. I'd say the early adopters. I think everybody's still trying to figure it out, though.
So do you think there is a like a market for like AI consultant-y kind of things being attached to MSP as part of their offering?
I would say 100%. Because we all just don't even, you only know what you know. If you're not like super technical, like I think I'm doing some pretty cool things with it, but then I get Garrett
You see
on
some
my
YouTube video and you're like, oh my God.
yeah, I mean, like even just Garrett on my team, like our CTO, and like he's showing me what he's doing, and I'm like, oh my god, like you're thinking of this in such a different way. And then I went to an AI summit a couple of months ago, and there was an MSP, Corey Kirkendall, and I was on stage with him, and I was like, oh my gosh, like I don't belong on the stage with him because like what he's doing within his own business. I went up to him afterwards. I was like, man, I was like, you should like sell this to MSPs. Like, I think you have something like that you can actually sell for MSPs to deploy. Because yeah, he was just on a whole nother level. So there's so much to be learned. But I absolutely, I think there's money to be made for consulting and services around it.
Well, Matt, you certainly belong on the stages. So I think you've got like a little bit of a imposter syndrome or something going on.
Maybe it's
You're
just when it's
fully
with AI
qualified.
stuff.
Well,
Yeah.
the funny thing about AI and like competency and who's an expert is that like even an expert is only like one or two steps ahead of you.
I know. That's true.
So like the other side of the AI coin is like we can create things a lot faster and have like a brainstorming partner if necessary. But there's also a lot of security risks. So there's like people adding data where they shouldn't and things like that. How do you see that kind of evolving and how do the precautions you see to take to prevent?
Um, so this is going to be one of those questions I might punt slightly because I don't know that I don't know that I can give an educated answer on where the security of this AI like video content and all this is going. I mean, one, I could just speak just anecdotally from what I've seen on like TikTok, and it's freaking scary. I mean, I mean, I was watching last night. It was George Washington versus Abe Lincoln in a wrestling match, and like if you didn't know who they were, it looked real. Like it's like obviously those are kind of the funny versions of it, but man, it's MSPs have to have real serious conversations with their customers because we, phishing is already such a big issue, but with voice. I think voice is the one that might scare me the most right now in terms of like for small businesses is, it's like, I think everybody's now gotten used to, okay, well, the CEO is not asking for this gift card via whatever email, but all of a sudden, if you get a call from your CEO and it sounds like them, and then they're asking for it, it's like a whole other layer that people just aren't, I don't know. I don't think any of us are really prepared for the AI threat, but I really can't speak
Yeah,
to it from too much of a security level.
yeah, and they're not asking for a gift card. They're asking for you to reset their password because they're, on the actual
True.
trip that they're the business trip that the person they're calling knows they're on.
Yep.
And it's like, oh, everything's adding up. This must be real. And they do the reset or do the whatever thing they wanted them to do.
Yeah, it all goes
Mm.
back to the airport selfie they took and told everybody where they were going.
Yeah. LinkedIn. It's always LinkedIn.
Yeah.
So like sorry, I was talking about like AI and security like all day, like two different things. Sorry.
No, you're fine.
So I want to look and talk about culture a little bit more. So you're like pretty outspoken about MSP culture and this not just tools. What are the practices like for teams and like how do we go from reactive to like proactive measures in our MSPs instead of firefighting. There's a lot of I see that word a lot in the MSP space. Like we're firefighting, and how do we get like how do MSPs get a little bit more proactive in their strategies and processes?
Like with their customers.
Yeah, with their customers.
Um, yeah, I mean, I think part of it is like it's very easy to like not want to know tough or the answers to tough questions of like how are things going and stuff like that. Um, so yeah, I think part of it is starting to like put in procedures to find out how things are going on a regular basis. Have somebody checking in with the customer. Um, Obviously, QBRs are a huge conversation that vendors and MSPs talk about, right? Um, you know, it is a chance to kind of reset the playing field each quarter and make sure expectations are set. I think that's always the biggest disconnect is expectations, right? Um, I think MSPs are in the inevitable position sometimes that they're supposed to be the experts on everything, but they're not. Like they're not all cybersecurity experts, but by the nature of what they manage and stuff, they're put in a position where the small business assumes that they do all that. And even with subscriptions and contracts, they're like, oh, why didn't you tell us about this contract that was up for no? Well, we don't have access to that. It's not something we manage. So I think that's where probably like the industry can really mature is around those quarterly business reviews, but also in those reviews, really just setting the proper expectations of what you do and what you don't do. Like sometimes
Yeah.
you have to be crystal clear on what you don't do based on their contract level.
And you were talking about like onboarding as kind of
Mm,
the not so friendly word or not so fun word. But those QBRs are kind of part of that as well.
yeah,
Like in order to build trust, you have to continually provide value and feedback.
yeah. And I think, look, continuing to listen to your small business customers, that it's not that you have to take every piece of advice because everybody runs their business differently. Like, and it as a vendor in the MSP space, every MSP has an opinion, and some of them are the best ideas, and some of them we don't even think of. But you can't. You also have to build tools or services for the masses. You can't customize everything. Otherwise, you just don't have a scalable business. It's easier on the vendor side, but as an MSP, I think you know you just don't want 1,000 different contracts and 1,000 different levels of service because it really becomes unmanageable at some point.
Well, and that I believe is kind of what BetterTracker does, right? Like it kind of manages those contracts for you.
Yeah, so it manages all of the contracts and subscriptions that one, there's the internal use case for yourself. So we had an MSP just tell me this was last week. I saved $20,000 using BetterTracker for myself, and I was like, "Whoa, that's a lot." So how did you do that? And honestly, I take a lot of flyers on like $200 a month SaaS tools, and I just completely forget about them. And I really went through it and cut things out that were either redundant or not being in use. And then on the flip side, again, same thing with their customers. Like we're in the technology space, so like you think we would track it better, but they don't. There hasn't been a tool for small businesses that really allow them to. So it's infinitely worse for their customers. And what's neat about it is it gives the MSP visibility into things that they are not managing. So yes, an MSP knows the tools that they are delivering to their customers, but they don't know what they're signing up for outside of that. And that's where there's a lot of opportunity. It's a lot of things we talked about, right? Efficiencies, redundant tools, have these business outcome conversations. I go back to the Zoom and Teams. It's a very small example, but that's what you discover. You discover, oh my gosh, you guys are paying $500 a month for Zoom? I had no idea. You get Teams for free over here, or so whatever it is. So that that's a small scale, but it really unlocks a lot of upsell revenue opportunities for them. But yeah, it's core. It's never miss a contract renewal ever again, and set up custom notifications so that you're getting alerted in a proactive way. And actually give you even a personal one, because I use the tool myself. Like I need to know how the tool is being used, and I did it myself. And we have pest control. We're here in Austin, Texas, and my bill went up $20. I got alerted to it, and I was like, "What the hell is this $20 thing?" Called them up. They added termite services to my thing, which I didn't agree to, and I got the $20 taken off and saved myself $60 in retro. So like that's where there's just Mike, I literally could go on for days with examples of small businesses wasting money on subscriptions that just keep going and going and going.
Does BetterTracker peek into like the bank account transactions, or does it use the on-device metrics? Which one,
So
or
a
both?
couple things. So we first launched, you can manually add contracts. The second piece, you could upload through CSV. A lot of MSPs put a lot of their contract data in a CSV. The third is exactly what you're talking about, which is a Plaid integration that connects to bank accounts and credit cards and brings in all the transactional data. So if you're familiar with Rocket Money, just think of Rocket
Yeah.
Money for your business. And then the fourth evolution will be on at the end of October is the OCR element, that AI-powered OCR, where you can extract it. And that's where it really becomes as automated as you can with contracts. So it really it's going to be very revealing for anybody who uses the tool. And look, you have to eat your own dog food. When we first launched it, we found $7,200 of just wasted spend, in like 10 minutes, because it was like you found a tool and you're like, I'm not familiar with that tool. And so we just kind of went around the executive team. We're like, who uses this tool? And it was one of those, like, you have a marketing person leave, and a marketing person's connected to 15 to 20 SaaS applications, and we thought we canceled it, and we didn't. And that's kind of the overarching thing, is like, us as small businesses, and I include ourselves in that, it's like we can't afford those misses. So that's what we're really empowering the MSPs to do with our tool, both internally and for their customers.
So asking for a friend, can only MSPs use BetterTracker?
No, anybody can use BetterTracker.
Okay. Just asking for a friend. That's all.
Yeah.
Anyway,
It's definitely more of a business application currently, though. Even though
right. Not
I mean, you
like
could
Rocket Money's free. They just pester you with all kind of ads and
right.
everything
Yeah.
for personal use.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, cool. Yeah, I'll be sending that over to our accounting team. Like, hey,
Yeah. I mean, well, that's the thing, is like, and I can tell you, like, a small business, one of the pushbacks they might say is, oh, I have a bookkeeper. Yeah, but a bookkeeper is using historical data, not proactive information coming to them, like, on the, when the transaction takes place. So they're always a minimum of a month or two behind, or 3 months behind, depending on when you do all your books. So, yeah. So,
well,
yeah.
sounds like a really great tool. So we're in like a, kind of this economic, let's just say tightening, I guess,
Hmm.
situation in our world, in our country. Um, Do you think that efficiency, spotting things like using tools like BetterTracker to save businesses money, do you think that is what, that efficiency is what separates successful MSPs from the rest over the next few years?
I think right now, yeah, I think it's one of the number one things. And obviously it sounds, it's a little self-serving, but it's the truth. I mean, it's just the economic times that we're in. The first thing that people start doing when they tighten their belts is look at everything, right? Personal and business. It's the same reason, like, conferences, as a vendor, what's the first thing you do when you tighten your belt? You start thinking, well, do we need to spend that much money at that conference or that? So it to me, it's a pretty universal thing that's taking place, and everybody's looking at it. What I would point out, because of the insight we get in our platform, is 92% of the core tools an MSP has, 92% of it is the exact same as their competitor. And so, what are you doing to differentiate yourself? What's going to separate you? And that's where I think, like, the business outcome conversations, even if it's not a tool that you're using, but you're having these types of conversations. Now, there's tools like ours that make it easier, but I just think really shifting the mindset to tackle those is going to be just critical for an MSP to separate themselves and really become, we could say business advisor, but true partner with that customer.
So you have a lot of things going on, Matt. That's kind of how we started this episode.
Yeah.
You got BetterTracker, GTIA, said it right that time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Channel program. Like, what is you're a prolific user of AI. What do you think is next on your plate? Or are you like, I got too much, I can't do anymore?
Oh my gosh. I really don't stop. Maybe I need to get better at this stuff, but I'm a believer of, like, I'm in the grind with the rest of the team, and, like, I'm always trying to grow and do the next thing. And actually, literally, my guy, right before this call, I was using LinkedIn because I want to again be different. I went back to a list of people who first demoed our tool a long time ago before we had some of these other features, and I was like, let me go back to them and just give them a quick update. And I'm doing personal messages via LinkedIn message on my phone, just as a way to try to stick out, So, like, there's always that salesperson in me. There's always a driver like that. But I'll be on the road. I'll be at a couple more events. We've got TMT, Robin Robbins community, coming up at the end of this month, and I'll be at Kaseya's Troop here. So yeah, I'll be at a couple different events. I think I've got a couple hosted dinners throughout a couple of towards the end of December or not beginning of December. But yeah, it's kind of the same old stuff, man. Just always trying to push forward, and I'm telling you, man, we're pushing forward our product just so much. And the only other thing I guess I could mention is we've got a cybersecurity like what we call a technology map coming out this month. And it really is just looking at the scope of all the cybersecurity tools in the space, and it's incredibly overwhelming because there's so many. But it's really breaking it down by category, and so it's a free report for MSPs that they'll be able to look at what are the most used products in the space, what are the highest rated based on the product reviews in our platform. So yeah, man, we got a lot going on.
Yeah, I love seeing it. I mean, it's kind of like an infographic of
Yeah,
logos.
yeah, that's
There,
exactly it.
every year you guys have one, and I'm every time I'm like, oh my gosh,
I know.
like you can't even see your logo because it's so small because there's so many. I
Yeah,
know a ton of work goes into that and
yeah.
everything else you're doing. So I will enjoy continuing to watch your journey, Matt. But where can people find you on the internet?
Probably the easiest way to find me is on LinkedIn. Um, yeah, it's probably where I'm the most prolific in terms of like putting out content. Or you can email me at just matt.solomon@bettertracker.com. Yeah, I'm pretty easy to find. I'm out there.
Yeah, yes, likewise. Well, thank
So,
you for joining me, Matt. I really appreciate it.
yeah, man, it's great seeing you, and I truly appreciate you having me on, and it's always good talking to you.